welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with our host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, the wrestling's premier photographer, Mike Lano, and the incomprehensible and absolutely, but not incomprehensible. You're better than that. You're the eloquent author and writer and producer, and I can keep using words to fill in the description of Evan Ginsberg.
Thank you.
And we have our really fantastic guest. I'm glad to have you back on again. John, you're a writer and an author, and you've done a lot of wrestling commentary. And it's been a little while since we've had you on, so welcome back. And
it's good to see you guys.
Yes, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Yep.
And
7th, Larry David says we can't say Happy New Year anymore. So.
Oh, okay, yes. Well, the Larry David show is going off the air this year. So
I know. Gosh, I'm so addicted to it. My wife can't stand it, but man, that show's fun. So
it has some great moments on it. So anyway, I guess wrestling keeps giving us stuff to talk about. Even if it's not somebody dying, it's Vince McMahon and the most recent imbroglio that's going on. And I know that you focus more on wrestling history than you do, everything that's going on currently. But I mean, this is an issue that's made mainstream news reporting and so forth. You have any thoughts to express about that?
I mean, I'm always one of those guys that focuses on the positive, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to say anything positive about Vince McMahon at this point. I mean, I think he's going to have his day in court and needs to answer for a lot of things. As far as what I focus on, last year and a half, guys, I've been a semi-regular, not as regular as I have been in months past, but at Ohio. Well, sorry, excuse me, it's not Ohio Valley Wrestling anymore, but OVW here in Louisville. I started attending there actually while they were filming the Netflix documentary, and have watched the transformation since that premiered. To be honest with you, that's been my fix of wrestling for the last year. I've watched some AEW. I actually saw AEW live twice in Kentucky this past year. I watched the men's Royal Rumble because I had to take my kids to the high school basketball game the other night. So unfortunately, Miss Jordan Grace making her debut. So I watched a little bit of that, but people are like, well, do you watch these? Like, no, I get my fix from OVW. And actually, I've just started following the local promotion here on the Jeffersonville side. If you saw the Netflix documentary, you saw the arena in Jeffersonville where they interviewed Ronnie and where they interviewed Haley. At one point, you saw them getting some extra reps and everything. That building is owned by Too Tough Tony. It's been in business for about 10 years. There's been a number of promotions kind of come and gone over the years in that building. But they have quietly built a loyal following. While OVW was still running half a building in Davis Arena, they were selling out last summer. And Sunday they did something that Brutal Bob Evans posted about a week ago, where he said, you don't book against the NFL playoffs. It's just not a good idea. They were sold out yesterday.
Wow.
The Baltimore Ravens game. So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, they were sold out. I'm not sure how many, if it's 300 or 400 that building holds. They put on an electric show. So, I do follow current events, and certainly I did read the full story on Vince McMahon. I found it absolutely disgusting. Not necessarily surprising. Well, no, it was surprising just how completely far everything and the details that came out. Not necessarily surprised about the other executive being named in that, but I mean, certainly disappointing. I've had some conversations with some folks behind the scenes at WWE. I do know that when Vince first stepped away and Triple H came back, it became a completely different company backstage. The culture completely changed, the atmosphere, from the dress code to, I mean, just kind of the rampant bullying and walking on eggshells that happened around Mr. McMahon was gone. And the proof is in, you look at the list of people that were let go of or that quit, in the 8 to 10 months before Vince's first departure from the company, and 90% of those folks came back, and folks continue to come back. And yeah, it's an interesting time, but I mean, certainly, the company that I tuned in and watched the other night is a much different company than the one that yeah, Latter-day Vince McMahon in particular was running. So,
Well, John, Hunter brought them back, and very quickly too. I emailed you earlier today because I can only stay on the first 20 minutes, but OVW was on a national cable channel that in my case DirecTV had, Max channel with MMA boxing. And for some reason, we lost it 4 months ago. But I've been watching OVW and really watching it improve, watching all the cool stuff Al Snow was doing and Jesse Goddard's and some of the vets. James Storm had come in and pumped some, brought in some vocal skills that are unparalleled and really good promotion. But on the Larry David situation, hopefully, I don't know if you're as old as Evan and I, but I never failed to watch Fridays on ABC, which was an SNL clone, copycat in the late.
I watched Fridays. I wasn't supposed to, but I did.
I never saw Friday. I'm well aware of what Fridays is. Never really saw it.
Well, Larry played a recurring pro wrestling character in the Golden Boys, and basically they had watched Chick Donovan come into the promotion I worked for as a ringside photographer, the Michael Bell promotion. Chick Donovan was not billed under his Georgia Championship Wrestling jobber name, but was just simply called the Golden Boy. And he had glitter all over him, hair and body, which he did not have working for Ole Anderson. But, whatever. And he was mid-Carter, kind of a fabulous Frank Monte, Rock Riddle type guy. And then they copied that with the wigs. You can go to YouTube and see there was about 8-9 skits as the Golden Boys where they cheated. They did all of that stuff. It was a love letter to pro wrestling. Michael Richard played one of the brothers with Larry, and one of the other characters did it for the most part. But it was very cool. I urge you to check it out to see.
Absolutely, yeah.
Connection with Larry David of all people.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned Rock a moment ago, and talking old TV shows. I'll tell this story. So we're coming up on 3 years since my dad passed, and he fell ill and was taken to the emergency room one night. I went and sat with my mom in the car while she was waiting to get admitted in because COVID restrictions. She wasn't couldn't just walk right in. And basically he lingered in the hospital for 16 days until we about 9 days in we found out he had cancer, and then a week later he was gone. But so that night sat with my mom in the car, went home. Now my dad was always a fan of guys like Martin Mull, guys like Fred Willard, and for some reason that night I remembered him talking about Fernwood Tonight. I never watched Fernwood Tonight, so I went to YouTube, I Googled it, and I'm scrolling through and I see an episode called The Wrestler. So I clicked the button, and who is it? It's freaking Rock Riddle, out there doing his thing and everything. I actually told Rock that story when I saw him last. It's the only time I've ever seen Rock.
I did not know that. I now want to see that episode.
Tonight was an offshoot, as Evan, you probably remember, Mary Hartman that Norman Lear created, and it was a spin-off with those very guys. But Rock Riddle also did the same thing. You might want to look this up on Soupy Sales. He played himself under the name Rock Riddle. And he came to the home. He didn't know that Soupy's dog was writing these horrific fan letters or saying what a terrible wrestler Rock Riddle was. So he comes to the house, and Soupy's dog, Black Fang, kicks the crap out of Rock Riddle.
I'll have to check that out as well. So, I've seen some of his clips from the Gong Show and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually, I broke the ice with him when I first met him. I saw him walking around, and I hadn't heard the name, so I Googled it real quick. And I'm like, I understand you knew Chuck Barris. And that just opened the floodgates. And I'd tell you, if you're watching this, you don't know who Rock Riddle is. You want to go find an interview with him. He's one of the most interesting guys to talk to. He's got some phenomenal
stories. He's been on this show.
Evan and I are close friends. We brought him on. He worked nearly every single territory. He jobbed in Florida, did some stuff in Texas, AWA. Came to LA. They put the tag straps on him and John Tolisev. We're doing that book on John Tolis. We put the America's tag straps on the two of them, and then Rock was back and forth, driving up and down to work. He was living in L.A., working also for Roy Shire, and then the L.A. thing got him into Hollywood. So that was kind of where all of that happened for him. And he's helped a lot of people get into acting. Obviously, wrestlers and other athletes transition to acting and stuff. And he's quite quite the cat. I mean, Ev,
If he ever gets that 1,000-page autobiography written and published, I definitely want a copy. I love Rock stories, love listening to him talk, and yeah, my favorite too is the one. I know you guys have all heard this. Like, do you know what my greatest regret is? I never got to sit ringside and watch me.
Yeah,
Serious. I'm serious. I never got to. You got to see me. I never got to see me. And
he ran a fan club for Rip Hawk, where he grew up in North Carolina. That was how Rock started. Similar to J.J. Dillon doing the same thing for Johnny Valentine in the 50s.
Yeah. I mean, just a great character, great guy. I'm headed to Waterloo this summer, and I believe he's going to be there. I can't wait to see him again. So,
Evan, you got some Rock Riddle stories.
I've done some shows with him, some podcasts and such, and he's very colorful, great talker, charismatic. And I grew up on the LA tapings. You know, we watched it in New York every Wednesday night. So I always enjoyed him. He was very colorful. And what else can I say? Rock Riddle.
So I've got, he's right there on the wall here. So
there you go. And you're on his wall. Did you know that?
Am I? Okay.
I just made that up.
All right.
He will never let anyone forget. He was the very first Mr. Wonderful before Orndorff.
Yep. Yes, he was. Yes, he was the original Mr. Wonderful. We can't neglect that fact.
So, I've always kind of admired Ohio Valley. I think that when I was working in APW in the early 2000s, Ohio Valley was really seen as like the feeder organization for the WWE, and they still do a lot of it's kind of like the quote unquote not so secret training grounds for WWE. So how does that influence what gets done in Ohio Valley and they run things?
It's a very different company now than it was then. At that time, it was the official. They had an official relationship with WWE. They would send their trainees down, and Cornette will tell you the frustrating stories about, well, we've created this character and he's Leviathan. Well, we're just going to call him Dave Bautista and put him on national TV, and we just Cornette's endless frustrations with that. But since Al's taken over, it's really transformed. I mean, you still have the school there. It's the Al Snow Wrestling Academy. If you go to the Al Snow Wrestling Academy, your beginner class is with Cash Flow. One of the great legends of the independents in IWA Mid-South and a lot of places. Your intermediate course is with Tony Gunn, who's been with OVW for quite a long time. And your advanced class is OVW student number 1. It's Doug Basham. Al managed to coax back in. But aside from that, I mean, OVW is a territory. It's a legit, and right now, I mean, it certainly you would classify it as a regional territory, but they have legitimate ambitions about growing that, about expanding their reach. Mike, you talked about how they're no longer on that one cable channel. They're actually free streaming now on YouTube every week.
Good.
Right now they're going from 6:30 to 9 p.m. They're still on. Well, it was Fight. It's now Triller, and the first half is free to watch, and then if you have a Triller subscription, you can watch the rest of it. But again, it's all free on YouTube. I believe they're still doing the local broadcast here on Channel 21. They're looking for better distribution as far as TV. Definitely looking to go on a national tour. I actually was talking with Eric Cornish the other day, the ring announcer, and he mentioned that again. That's definitely a project that's happening. And you look at the presentation too. I mean, since the Netflix documentary premiered on a Wednesday. Thursday night, the building was probably 3/4 of the way full. It had gotten to the point where it was, for the most part of the year leading up to being released, it was about half full, except for the bigger shows. And then over the summer, it kind of picked up a little bit. It was probably about 2/3 full on an average night. Week after it was sold out. It was sold out for like 8 weeks in a row, including their pay-per-views. And they expanded, and they have rearranged that tiny little steel building in ways that I couldn't even imagine. Just to get more seats in there and everything like that. The ticket prices have, of course, gone up, but they're still packing the seats. They're still selling out the front row every week. They've also even made more room for gimmick tables. There's that's something you never saw back in the day when it was a school, was the gimmick tables. But there a lot of the wrestlers are always out there. Cash is always there. Cal Hero's usually out there. Layla and Tiffany Nieves, TW3. A lot of the younger stars and stuff are out there. That's another thing too, is you will look at OVW and you watch their television presentation, you're going to see some fantastic young talent. I just mentioned TW3 Cal Hero. I did a story for Slam on Luke Curtis, who is a really, really rising star. He's actually got an NWA title shot here in a couple weeks against DC3 at OVW on February 15th at their TV taping. They've got some other really great young guns. Tony Evans has turned himself into one of the most hated heels in all of Louisville, Kentucky, with his Hush gimmick. Will Austin's really coming along. Star Rider, who's a masked wrestler, is kind of coming along. On the ladies' side, they've got some. I can't say enough about Shalonce Royale. She is out of the Gloria Baratini mold in that she is a trained opera singer, and she uses.
I was going to ask you about the one that came to the ring singing.
Yes, she is actually, her degree is in musical performance. When I interviewed her for Slam, we talked for 90 minutes, and we talked at least half of that just about opera. And just a phenomenal young lady, just a really, really great person. Like I said, there's a lot of young talent, but then you look at the rest of that, that locker room.
I've got to go. Mahabala Shira from TNA Impact.
Certainly, yeah.
Back, forth. Before I go, I want to forget of all the many books John has done. He's done a lot, not all pro wrestling, but Don't Call Me Fake with Dr. D. David Schultz. When you brought him to Cauliflower Alley, that was huge. I don't think I've been as thrilled, even though it went long, with anybody's acceptance speech on stage as when our Dr. D. David Schultz. What a character, nice guy. Everybody loved him, and you bringing him, that was a big thrill for a lot of folks. I mean, Jerry Briscoe couldn't stop raving about that speech, and the lecture he gave during the daytime, one of the afternoon seminars. So Don't Call Me Fake, but you guys don't let him go without him plugging all these books and upcoming projects. You've got
lots to start now.
I appreciate it, Mike.
All right, you guys have a great show.
Okay, Mike.
Let's
See you next week. Go Niners.
Good night, guys.
See you, boss.
So,
Yeah, just to plug OVW just a little bit more too. Like I said, it's you've got the younger guns, but you've got some incredible veteran talent coming in. Real One, formerly Enzo Amore, is in a really hot feud right now with Tony Gunn. He's there about every other week. Mick Foley's there every other week right now, and doing in-ring stuff. And he's kind of, I mentioned Tony Evans a minute ago. He's really putting Tony over. He keeps coming out and grading everybody, giving everybody A's and B's, and giving Tony F's. They've got another guy, Jack Vaughn. If you're on TikTok, you need to be following the veteran Jack Vaughn. He's created this wonderful gimmick on there where he makes fun of indie wrestlers, and a lot of indie wrestlers and a lot of indie wrestling fans hate his guts because they think he's making fun of them. They don't realize he's one of them.
That's how it usually goes over.
That's just such a great gimmick, and he makes fun of the thigh slaps repeatedly and everything. And actually, during the Rumble not too long ago, Cash Flow comes in. He starts chopping people left and right. Jack covers himself up. So where does Cash hit him? Thigh slap, hits him in the thigh. And I swear that man's calf, now his thigh was just one giant red welt. I mean, Cash hit him so hard. So he probably had that welt for a couple days. But no, it's a legit territory. I mean, just legit veteran talent that's in there working with the younger guys. The younger guys get better and better. They iron sharpens iron. When you're getting in the ring with Cash Flow, when you're getting in the ring with Tony Gunn or with Jack Vaughn or with EC3 or Jesse Goddard's, any of these folks, or you're working in a faction with somebody like that, you can't help but get better. And now they've brought Mickey James in, to work with the ladies and also work creative. Amazing Maria is still there working with Mickey and everything with the women's division. They brought in a lot of girls made their premiere at the Rumble not too long ago. Quite a few of them are still there and sticking around. It's going to be interesting to see who sticks and who kind of grows with it. So. But it is definitely a promotion to watch. Like I said, I get my fix watching OVW. And part of it is, when you're here local and you get to go to the shows week in and week out, you get to know a lot of the folks, getting to work, talk to people behind the scenes and tell stories. I get invested in the people. My daughter's become a fan too. She's been going with me since probably a year and 3 months ago. Decided to start going with me because she was free on Thursday nights as well. And
how old is she?
She's 16 now.
Okay.
Yep.
So maybe still hope that my daughter will eventually learn to care about wrestling.
She's taken to it. She gets vocal. She's screaming and she's yelling at them and stuff like that. has her ones she loves and ones that she hates, and we're usually the only two in the building cheering on Shalonce when she comes out. But I just love that girl. And her manager too, PJ Jones. I interviewed him and did a story on him on my website, eatsleepwrestle.com, not too long ago. He's a longtime stand-up comic here in the area, and is friends with Brian Kennison, who's the lead commentator on television. And he starts playing. He comes in as Shalonce's attorney, threatening to sue Al Snow over some injustice that's happened to Shalonce. And 2 weeks.
That's my gimmick.
2 weeks later, fans are holding up signs that say "PJ got me off." So, and then he actually told me too. He's like, "I've got fans coming up to me going, 'Hey, I got this legal issue.'" He's like, "Oh no. I'm a computer guy and a stand-up comic. I am not a real attorney. I just play one on TV."
Wow, I really am an attorney, and I do computer stuff. That's a legal technology consultant. So that's actually a pretty funny thing there. So Evan, you got some questions about OMV or OVW, right?
You got it. OVW.
OVW.
Yes. Seems that you're very enthusiastic about it, which is nice to hear, because I was watching Royal Rumble the other night and I was pretty numb by the middle of the first match. So, fighting to stay awake. That women's battle royale, it clocked in at about 5 hours and 87 minutes, or at least it felt that way.
Gosh, I should have still been able to see some of it after the game. So I got that's just the men were starting. I
still be going on.
So
I mean, I'm sure Russell was happy that Bailey won because Russell worked with her. But so Russell could say that he worked with somebody who may be main eventing WrestleMania one night. So
I've done that already. I've worked with Samoa Joe and I worked with John Cena and now Bailey. So
there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So
picking up the accolades.
So John, tell us about your latest book.
So latest one I released was June Byers. Did the biography of the great women's wrestling champion who followed Mildred Burke and preceded the fabulous Moolah's reign. Debunking some myths in particular about the passing of the torch that happened. I think it's pretty common knowledge that the Mildred Burke defeat was definitely controversial. It was supposed to go 2 out of 3 falls. She scored 1 pinfall, which Mildred Burke said she conceded because her knee had given out on her. She had a knee that badly needed surgery. June will said it differently and said that she got that pin by force. The match was called after only 1 fall, and of course, politics being what it was, June was declared the champion. She'd already been crowned a year before in Baltimore, Maryland, at a tournament that did not include Mildred Burke. But the big myth that was debunked was the whole idea that the fabulous Moolah defeated June Byers for the Women's World Championship. I've got a copy of Moolah's biography right over here that was published by the WWE, in which she says she defeated June Byers in Louisville, Kentucky for the World Championship. Never happened. I debunked that myth with my first book when I wrote the history of wrestling in Louisville, and went back a couple years later and with the Allen Athletic Club, I pulled every single result that's ever happened in Louisville, Kentucky, particularly in the 1950s, and fabulous Moolah never wrestled June Byers for the championship. And it was interesting going through the newspaper art records, and even a year after this match happened, less than a year after this match happened, in early 1955, Moolah's going around saying, "I defeated June Byers in this town. I defeated June Byers in that town," and just saying it enough times, I think maybe she did believe it herself. It's worth noting, though, in the documentary Lipstick and Dynamite, they ask her the question, how did you become Women's World Championship? I won it. Who did you defeat? The previous world's champion. She did not name June by name in the documentary, which I found interesting. But no, June won the belt in the summer of 1954. She held it until January 1st, 1964, when she retired. Did her star kind of fade? When the women's scene was changing? Absolutely. And as she restricted herself more and more to just working in Indiana or working in up in Stampede for Stu Hart and different places and everything, Moolah was able to kind of move in. She obviously had a lot of very powerful friends and everything that kind of helped her to take control of the women's business, which was really up for grabs after things fell apart between Billy Wolf and Mildred Burke. But can't take anything away from June. She was an unconquered champion. fought hard to get everything she got, from coming into the business and working her way up on the cards. And certainly, there's definitely some strokes of luck. Did June do some things with Billy Wolf, in order to get better places on the card? Most of them did. So, I mean, that was just unfortunately, it's sick, but it's unfortunately just what happened at that time. So, and nothing right about it, but June was a very, very strong woman. She was, I mean, as soon as she was out of the business, she got a real estate license. She was selling real estate in El Paso. When she moved back to Houston, she continued to sell real estate. Was a very powerful businesswoman. Did a lot with charities, with the local animal groups. Loved dogs. A lot of photos, a lot of publicity photos of her with her Pekingese dogs and everything. Had the chance to interview two of her granddaughters who went to accept June's Hall of Fame recognition at the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame this past summer. Had a chance to work with Kaylee Farmer, Camille Brickhouse, the former NWA Women's Champion, who played June Byers in the movie that was filmed over the summer in Louisville, Kentucky. She actually wrote the foreword for the book. And side bonus, I got to interview Billy Wolf's granddaughters. And I've got a great story actually about. Part of the story is told in the book, but I've got a much longer version of the story about her father, their father G. Bill Wolf, Billy Wolf's son, and their mother Betsy Ross, who was a young lady that worked in Billy Wolf's office, and was actually apprenticed, mentored under June Byers, and was a very close friend of hers, despite the circumstances that June divorced G. Bill and then she married Betsy, but. The story that I was told by the granddaughters is that June knew this. June was no longer in love with G. Bill, and she loved Betsy, and she loved G. Bill, and as a person, she was like, "You have my blessing." And I believe the something borrowed, if I remember right, the something borrowed that Betsy wore at their wedding came from June. So, just a really beautiful story. But and the reason I'll say this too, the reason I wrote about June, I from early on in my studies about wrestling history and reading about women wrestling in particular, I was Team Mildred Burke, from the beginning, and reading her story that Jeff Lee wrote, the wonderful book, Queen of the Ring. I wrote Elvira Snodgrass's biography, still saw June as a villain. And then when I wrote Mars Bennett's biography a couple years ago, and got a hold of some photos of Mars and June on vacation with June's son Billy, and definitely saw a different side of June, which really kind of opened me up. And I feel like if you're going to be a biographer of somebody, you have to be able to take, if you can't at least take an objective viewpoint, you've got to be able to see both sides and see the positive in them, which is the reason I'm not going to be writing Moolah's biography anytime soon, which we need to have a more thorough biography of her. I'll leave that to Chris Bergstrom. If anybody can do it, it's probably him. But for June, I kind of came around on June, and I wanted to know more of her story. And thanks to Chris, I was able to get in touch with the granddaughters, was able to talk to Betsy Wolf and to her older sister about their family, and just tell a fantastic story about another great trailblazer whose name really isn't as recognized as it should be.
There you go.
Now, can you tell me how you find out some of the stuff that's not available online? I know you do interviews, but it sounds like you're also looking into some other records and into some other sources of information that's not commonly thought of by, I think, a lot of authors and a lot of people who do biographies. Can you explain a little bit of those secrets, if you don't mind?
That wouldn't necessarily call them secrets. I mean, newspapers.com is the big archive for actually finding the results and finding out where people were. I always usually start with wrestlingdata.com if I'm doing somebody's biography. I'll go through and whatever records Wrestling Data's got, I'll compile that into one document. And generally what I found is, depending on the person, 70 to maybe about 75% of that is going to be fully accurate, and then some of it is not going to be accurate. Black Panther Jim Mitchell in particular, there were a lot of discrepancies in the record because there were so many people who used the name Black Panther. But it gives you kind of a good guide, and you can kind of follow through in the newspaper archives and kind of follow where they are. You can see where things veer off a little bit. You can kind of discover, particularly like Mars Bennett, she's using this name right here. She's working for Jack Pfeffer as opposed to working for Billy Wolf for a short time. And that's something else too, is the more you read about other people and the more you read about that history and you know who else was working and who was working the territories, you can kind of put two and two together, read between the lines. Sit with Jim Cornette early on and going through Courier Journal archives at the library. He really kind of taught me and just how to make inferences and to kind of pick up on little clues and stuff like that as defining some different information and interpreting things. And I'll say this, Chris Bergstrom has a Facebook page called The Fabulous Ladies of Wrestling, and it's women's wrestling up through 1970, period. Let's not talk about anything beyond that. Little bit. He does allow for a little bit of that, but he really concentrates. And I mean, if there's, I could show him a photo of any lady from, the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and he'll tell me who they are and give me a whole bunch of biographical details on it. So he's a great resource. And one of the best things he's done is he's reached out to a lot of the family members of folks like June and Elvira and Mars and everything like that. When I did Mars's, said, hey, I'm thinking about doing Mars's biography. He's like, do you want to talk to Jesus? And he put me in touch with them. I got to talk to Mars's brother very briefly before he passed away at the age of 100 a couple years ago when I first started working on that book. So it's finding people that knew them, finding people that had that personal, that one-on-one connection certainly does help quite a bit. And being willing to go beyond just certain archives and stuff like that. Having the opportunity to reach out to people in Houston and dig into some of the more, the archives aren't necessarily available online. Certainly does help out. The library up at the University of Notre Dame that has all of Jack Pfeffer's papers, which I still haven't been up there personally myself, but they're always great if I reach out to them and I look through the indexes and say, hey, I need this file, this file, this file. A couple days later, I'll get a treasure trove of letters or photos or whatever. They have, in Mars's case, there's a handwritten letter that I'm 99% sure is a note she left for Jack Pfeffer the day of or the day before she passed away when she went and copped in the car and it was unfortunately in that wreck. So there's some really interesting things in there. And
Kevin, you got anything on your mind?
I'm very impressed by John's due diligence when he does these projects. Especially these are people before John's time. I mean, usually when I write about anything wrestling related, it's with a nostalgic glow. I grew up with them as a kid, or I watched them on TV as a kid, and I went with my dad to see them, and my dad is gone now. And I'm writing about wrestlers that I saw live, maybe I met on occasion, in certain instances, developed friendships with some of them, as an adult. But I've never sat down and written about a wrestler that was decades before my time. And it's impressive, the journalism. And let's discuss this for a minute, because we have a real journalist in John. Many times in pro wrestling, quote unquote wrestling journalism is scoops or gossip or absolute BS, or somebody's just repeating ad infinitum from the same exact source.
Or it's just a monologue of hate. It's just a monologue of what they hate.
So, the bar is set relatively low. I would maybe put the legitimate writers, not obsessives, writers, on two hands in wrestling. Guys who could actually, I grew up on sports journalists like Red Smith, guys like this, who were writers. They could make you cry with the written word. And when I was a kid, we had these sports tragedies. Roberto Clemente dying, doing, humanitarian work. His plane went down. He was bringing food to people in Puerto Rico. Thurman Munson's plane went down. And you would read these writers. And it's very different today, somebody obsessively overanalyzing every aspect of the upcoming Super Bowl,
Right.
it's so for John to say, I'm going to write about somebody who retired before I was born or before I could see him or her in the ring, I'm impressed by this. And let me say something else about wrestling journalism. And I'm not making a blanket statement. A lot of people, consider great writing a bombardment of information, title changes and dates and minutia. How about, moving the reader, making the reader
care,
really care and understand who this person was and what they went through beyond, they held 87 regional titles in the 1960s or whatnot. Wrestling journalism has some real pluses and minuses, but today I think there's so many options, there's so many different sources that you can pick and choose what's meaningful to you. I'm the senior editor over at ProWrestlingStories.com. We have almost 900 stories on pro wrestling history, and guys like Javier Oist, who we've had on the show, he'll pick some, subject out of left field, like wrestling in El Salvador, and he'll do this deep dive, and like I've never heard of 90% of the guys, and by the time he's done with it, you're like, wow, I can picture this. I could, because he did his homework and he's a writer. It's not just a bombardment of dates and facts and title histories. And what's your take on all of this, John?
I think there's like you said, there's something for everybody out there. For the folks that just want to know what the latest rumors are and they want to hear the gossip and buzz, that's out there. For the guys that like the stats, they want to know the stats on how many times the guy won a title, what town they won it in, this and that, everything like that. That stuff's out there as well. For a long while on my social medias and stuff, I listed myself as a wrestling historian, and I've changed that recently, and I've changed myself to a storyteller, because really that's what I am. I write plenty of fiction as well. And recently, we've kind of branched out and worked with a friend of mine on a book about the haunted history of Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. We've got some plans to do some other kind of different. Actually, working on a cryptids book here soon, which will be a lot of fun. But I'm a storyteller. That's really what's kind of set, kind of been the niche that I've aimed for with the books that I've told and the stories that I've told. When I did. Bluegrass Brawlers. I mean, it's the story of wrestling in Louisville, and not that it's not historically accurate, as accurate as it can possibly be, based on the research that's available. But I want to, like you said, Evan, I want to know the story. I want to, I was talking to somebody yesterday. They're asking about some of my books, and the two hardest ones for me to finish were Mars Minutes and Chris Candido, just because of how tragic those endings were, and it's, I mean, there's a lot of pathos and a lot of drama to that. You can give just the raw numbers, Chris Candido died on the state, whatever, but it's, you have to feel the loss that was there. And I talked to so many guys that, listening to guys on the phone, like Tommy Dreamer break down, over somebody who died ages ago, and just that loss, and where could he be? What could he be doing in the business? And I'll
tell you a quick Chris Candido story. I was at an indie in New Jersey, and this had to be 30 years ago. I lose track of time. And there's Chris Candido and Tammy and Sabu and their kids. Like this is like a small indie. And Sabu and Chris are wrestling the opening match. Nobody knows who they are. And Tammy's like the adoring girlfriend at the time. And, and they were fresh-faced kids. Basically.
Yeah.
And, to see the toll that this business had on them, it is tragic. And, when you get your own like Dark Side of the Ring episode, things have taken a dark turn. Unfortunately. Sure. And as a jaded old school fan, I started attending wrestling 50 years ago, 1974. Literally 50 years.
Yeah.
I always said Chris Candido's great. This guy's great. And he was just a technical machine, and with charisma, and absolute shame what happened to him, to go out that young, and he loved the business in spite of what it did to him.
Just to bring us back to a positive mindset. One of my favorite Candido stories, Man Scout Jake Manning told the story. This was when he was first starting out, and he was working. I want to say it was an IWA Mid-South show, but I'm not for sure. But it was like in a school cafeteria was where the show was, and the gorilla position was the door from the kitchen of the cafeteria going out. And Jake's sitting by himself in that kitchen, by himself. He's nervous. It's his first match. He's, just doesn't know what to do. Here comes Chris Candido. Chris Candido is already off of his WWE run. He's trying to make his comeback with the Indies and everything. 5'7", comes walking into the kitchen and sees this kid sitting over there. Doesn't say anything to him, but there's a mirror over the sink in the kitchen. And Chris goes over to kind of like he's going to check his hair, and he's too short for it. So he gets a stool, and he says he does this whole comedy bit, this whole Three Stooges bit, getting on the stool, checking his hair, everything like that, all for an audience of one, this nervous kid sitting in the corner of the room. It just meant so much. And then, of course, after Jake's match, Chris goes and pulls the promoter aside. Hey, the Jake kid was really good. You should, but that's just who he was. He'd brighten a locker room. The guys told, so there were times he'd be in the locker room and it'd be all, guys who were just kind of sitting there hanging their heads. Another night, like, guys, we're pro wrestlers. We get to do what we love for a living. This is what we loved as kids, and we get to do it now. And I can get myself all worked up again, talking about, where would he be? Would he be at AEW, working behind the scenes? Would he be at would he have patched things up with Hunter and Sean? Would he be at the Performance Center? Can you imagine the influence he could have on the young generation? He'd still be wrestling. There's no way in the world, he wouldn't even be, I guess he'd be 51 now. I mean, there's no way in the world he would not be wrestling some of the guys that are wrestling in their 60s and 70s now. So, just the absolute love he had for the business and the light that he brought to everybody. I mean, I talked, so many people were like, yeah, I'll tell you about Chris and tell you stories. And they're all just so positive and just missing him like crazy. So Tammy, it was kind of split as their feelings on her and that relationship. But Chris, oh gosh, everybody loved him.
We just had show number 200, and one of the questions from show number 200 is one that I'd like to bring to you, because you're so introspective about wrestling as an industry and as a sport and as a way of life. What exactly does wrestling mean to you, and why do you like it so much?
Oh gosh, I think there is a little bit of connection to your youth and to watching it. I mean, I came into it during the Rock and Wrestling era. I told the story that I moved
40 years ago. It's right at 40 years.
Oh, yeah, we're right at 40 years ago. I mean, seeing, I knew Mr. T and I knew Cyndi Lauper, and all of a sudden they're hanging out with pro wrestlers on TV, and then moving from Houston, Texas, up here to Louisville, Kentucky. Never watched Memphis on TV. Never went to the Louisville Gardens, but every afternoon I was watching the Von Erichs on the reruns on ESPN. I'm ashamed to say I still haven't seen the Iron Claw.
That's very interesting.
It's going to be a hard one to watch, but Kevin Von Erich is still my all-time favorite. Von Erichs versus Freebirds. I remember downloading a free Roku wrestling app. First thing that came on was Von Erich's Freebirds, introduced by Michael Hayes. I was like, well, this is the greatest thing I ever saw. I love the theater of it. I love the athleticism of it. I take a lot of inspiration from, as much time as I spend looking at the history and looking at people that, wrestled their last match decades before I was born. I love the Indies. I love OVW. I love going out to Ashland, Kentucky, visiting with Bobby Blaze and seeing his kids and the kids he's got coming up. I've watched a lot of indie promotions around here. Right now, I'll tell you a guy to look for at OVW he's finally getting it. OVW might be his shot for the national big spotlight is this kid named Shane Mercer. And I say kid, he's been around for longer than I've been writing about wrestling. Shane is maybe an inch taller than me. He's a deathmatch guy. He's got scars all over his back. he is pound for pound the strongest guy I have ever seen in the ring. He has a finishing move. It has to be seen to be believed, called the moonsault battery, where essentially he's got a guy held in front of him like this. He goes to the second turnbuckle. He does a backflip and lands with them on their back. I've seen him do this move to 450-pound Congo Kong. And Shane, so many guys you see, this guy's got a kickoff for him to do this move or whatever. Moonsault battery is all Shane. I mean, it's all on him to get over, so he's not breaking his neck and he's not hurting the guy, and he hits it every single time. And I can't tell you how many guys I've seen him just power lift. No kickoff. Shane can just get him up there, and he'll sit there and hold him up there. It was really funny. A couple weeks ago, I saw him working against Reverend Ronnie Roberts, and Ronnie actually put Shane straight up and held him straight up for 20 seconds just to show that Ronnie could do it as well. But I love the indies, and I draw inspiration from these people because they're going out there every week and they're making the drives, and they're getting their $20. They might get 20 more at the gimmick table. I've been an aspiring writer for 30 years. I've got a great, wonderful day job. Finally, for the first time in my life that I really enjoy, but I'd still gladly be a full-time writer if I could. I'm not there yet. I'm not even close to that yet. But I'm still going. And I draw inspiration from watching people like that, from guys like Shane, from the OVW crew, from Reese Ramon down in Ashland. I got to put Reese over, who's one of Bobby's students. Not only is she a pro wrestler, she's a double major at Marshall University, one of those being engineering. She's looking to go to law school. And, oh, yeah, she was a majorette in the marching band as well, while training and going out and doing pro wrestling every week. I draw inspiration from that, just watching them go out and watching them pursue this. And, I've actually started, like I said, I started following Grindhouse over here in Jeffersonville at the arena, and I'm going to actually be charting them over the next year and just following this group of young kids and watching, students make their debut matches and watching them go out and have their first bookings other places and stuff like that. Because that's, every wrestler's got a story, and every one of these kids at this school, my gosh, they've all got backstories. This promotion, Grindhouse, has trained a guy who is blind to wrestle. Darren the Inspirer. There's a documentary on Tubi. They have a tag team, two brothers right now, called the Deaf World Order. They're deaf. And what's beautiful too is they come to the ring. The fans are doing this. They're doing the sign language applause. It's very cool. And just they're training. Tony and Ronnie will train guys that nobody else will train. And it's a low entry fee to get in. You pay $200-300. You pay by the month as you go. There's no $2,000 down. We're going to beat you up the first day, and if you come back the next day, maybe we'll train you. It's a
Buzz Sawyer method of training.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could name some other guys. Now they have their big, January match. They had their big Rumble yesterday, and you could tell the guys they're having their new match because they're the ones over in the corner getting chopped by Apollo. Then they're getting chopped by Tony and everything. They're going to chop shop. But it's a different mindset. It's a different attitude. Tony's philosophy is we want you to leave this place still loving pro wrestling, even if you don't go on to be a pro wrestler. We want this to be the best place that you ever wrestle. We want you to have a positive experience, and if nothing else, just get to know what it's like to be a wrestler and to get to understand that. So. What does wrestling mean? I love the theater of it. I love the story of it. Love good long-term storytelling. Al Snow and OVW, they've excelled at that for a long time, long before anybody, got hyped about them with the Netflix.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because while we're still out of time, I wanted you to talk about the Netflix documentary and what it was like to have them come down and film. And how did that even come together? There are lots of indies around the United States. Why? I know Ohio Valley is one of the premier indies, but how did that all come about? Or do you know how that all?
I'm not 100%. It has to do something with the ownership group, with Mayor Greenberg and Matt Jones and those guys. It has something to do with them coming in, and they literally did come in while the growing pains were happening, while Al was learning how to mesh with the new investors and stuff. And, OVW was, they were in financial trouble, and then the new owners came in, and part of the reason it kind of got precipitated was the new owner's philosophy was, we want to make sure everybody's getting paid. Most of the guys were not getting paid week in and week out at OVW. A handful of them were, but now everybody's getting paid. All the rest are getting paid. If you work in sessions or photography or camera or whatever, and that, of course, was putting them in an even deeper hole. But I'm not 100% sure whether it was Greg reaching out to them reaching out to Greg, how that exactly happened. But I mean, it certainly was serendipitous. It was just right time, right place for OVW. Certainly right time, right place for everybody who was there and was able to be a part of it. The coolest, the coolest thing. Again, it premiered on a Wednesday, and then Thursday the 14th was their very next show. And again, it's about 2/3 full. Everybody in that building had watched most, if not all, of the documentary. And I'll wager every single one of them had gotten up through the episode where they did the spotlight on Mahabali Shera. And you talk about, so Shera, of course, in the documentary, we see him. He's the champion. He's the babyface. He gets injured. He has to drop the belt to James Storm. Storm would go on to drop the belt to Cash Flow. Shera, when he came back, actually turned heel and joined what was called The Faction, along with Jesse Goddard and Luke Curtis and Adam Revolver and Shannon the Dude, the manager. So Shera had been a heel for a good solid 10 months leading up to the Netflix documentary. So here it is, September 14th, or September 10th, whatever day it was, that Thursday. Shera comes out with Shannon the Dude. Everybody hates Shannon the Dude, but they're not booing Shera. It was the complete, everybody was so excited and they're cheering, and Shera's coming out, and even Shera can't believe it. Shera's trying not to smile. It was a really beautiful thing. And he wrestles his match. He beats the guy, bullies the guy, and he rolls out of the ring. Every kid's down there on the rail. They've all got their hands out. Everybody wants a high five. And again, Shera cannot contain the smile. It was just, it's like there's no Al didn't do it immediately. He did it storyline wise, and he took his time over the next couple weeks. But Shera turned babyface. Right now, he's tagging up with Cash Flow. But that was something to see, man. Just to see that reaction, and and it's been that way for everybody. It's week in and week out. Eric Cornish, during a break will ask, who's from out of town, who's from someplace other than Kentucky or Indiana, and one week, people from Michigan, North Carolina, Washington State, California. People are flying from all over the place just to see OVW. And they're coming in on the weeks, too, where the place is sold out. So they had to buy their tickets online as well as, get that. If they didn't buy their tickets online, they were out of luck when they got there. A lot of people being turned away at the door. It's been amazing. It's really been cool. It's really, I'm so happy for everybody that's over there. We got a lot of longtime friends that are there, and again, just being there at the right place, at the right time, and seeing the opportunity. And a lot of them are kind of like, we ask them, it's like, what's going on? It's like, well, we don't know. Every week is something new. There's a new investor, there's new cameras, there's a new layout. Poor Becky Katie, who works the merch stand, she's been moved, I think, 5 or 6 times, as far as where she sets up every week. But it's been really cool. I certainly wish them all the best. And actually, Louisville Business First just did a big article on it last week. And can OVW become a national name? It's not an easy road to happen, but it happened with DCW. WCW started off as regional promotions and ended up, others merging in and becoming a conglomerate. WWF was a regional promotion at one time, and now it's the worldwide leader. So, is there a place for them out there? I don't know. I hope so. It's good people over there, and I would love to see them become stars. And I think you'll see over the next 6 months, some of them are going to be snatched up by other places. You might see a couple of them go to TNA or go to AEW. Two of my favorite people over there, Truth Magnum and Turbo Floyd, the Outrunners. If you have not seen an Outrunners match, go to YouTube and look up the Outrunners. You will swear these guys just stepped out of a time machine from Florida Championship Wrestling in like 1981. They've got the Miami Vice, the fluorescent, and they got the headbands and everything like that. And just they're total throwbacks. But AEW is using them every week. Ring of Honor is using them every week. NWA is using them. The most recent, Jericho Cruise, he's got the list of all the wrestlers, and right down there at the bottom, the Outrunners, Truth Magnum and Turbo Floyd. and those guys have been there. I've seen those guys under other gimmicks. They've both been there, between the two of them, they've got more than 30 years experience. They're locker room leaders, they're teachers, they're mentors to the other young guys backstage. But they are two guys who hit on the right gimmick just as COVID happened, and they were able to spend the whole COVID year refining it so that when COVID ended, they were able to just kind of break out. So I would really enjoy watching what's happening with them, and excited to see what happens to everybody else over there.
What's your next book that you're looking
at? Jesse Goddard's book is just about done, and we'll be getting that out sometime this year. I have plans to work with legendary Larry D at some point later on this year as well. Another longtime indie guy who just retired, had his retirement match. We'll see if that sticks. Nobody's retirement match ever sticks, but Larry's doing some great things down in Cynthiana, Kentucky. He's building up a group called Generation Next Wrestling. He's training some really, really great kids down there. And then Grindhouse Pro Wrestling, my plan is to follow them over the next year and tell that story in book form. And again, I just kind of decided I want to do something different. 10 years ago, I did my first book on indie wrestling, and this is going to be even more different than that. I tell everybody, if you remember A Season on the Brink, the book about Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers, it's kind of the same idea. I'm just going to follow a wrestling school. I'm going to get to know these kids and get to watch and see what happens. We're going to capture the good and the bad. It's an exciting little promotion. Again, this is a promotion that under the radar, if nobody knew about OVW, then absolutely nobody knew about Grindhouse, but they're selling out, every month. They're churning out great kids. This is the school that started Billy Starks from day one. One of the teachers there, Rev Ronnie, he's the one that trained Haley J from day one. So there's definitely a reputation that's already being built. It's a positive place. A place you can take kids. There were 3 babies and 1 pack and play at the show yesterday. Okay, so that's how family this place is, and just some really great, some really awesome young talent that I'm excited to see what happens with them over the next year.
Great, Evan, you got a final question for John here?
John, what do you think is going to happen with WWE at this point?
I think they're going to move on, and Vince unfortunately is not a guy you can erase as easily as you can erase Chris Benoit. I think they're in great hands with Triple H. I'm interested.
What about the move to Netflix? What do you think about that move to Netflix, though?
I think it was inevitable. Somebody was going to go there. It's kind of, I wonder what that does to OVW's chances of having a season 2 of wrestlers. Unfortunately. I don't know, I don't necessarily depend on them for my weekly fix. I want to see OVW continue to thrive and Grindhouse. And I think I mentioned FTC in Ashland as well. I get down there at least once a year just to see how Bobby's doing, see how his kids are doing, and just watching the future and seeing how. And it's neat too to, I said I've been doing this 10 years and see, I think it was January, actually 11 years ago, January of 2013, I went to my first IWA Mid-South match. I saw a Falls Count Anywhere match between 2 young ladies. One was named Heidi Lovelace, who's now Ruby Riott over there at AEW, and the other one was 17-year-old named Jordan Grace, NA Women's Champion, who made her debut at the Rumble the other night. And I'm like, wow, damn it, I missed it. I was so bad that I was trying to avoid spoilers. I think the world of Jordan. I've been a huge fan of hers. Jordan and the Rascals going to TNA was the reason that I switched over and started watching Impact and TNA. But then, of course, Larry followed suit, and a couple other folks that I became a huge fan of Moose as well. But it's fun to watch these journeys happen. The same month that I saw Jordan wrestle, for the first time, I saw Crazy Mary Dobson, who's now Valhalla, for WWE. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. This is nothing. If she's happy and she's doing what she's doing, I miss watching Crazy Mary Dobson. She was a whole lot of fun. I'm not sure what to make of Valhalla, but a
lot of people do. But
if I could go back and watch Crazy Mary Dobson and Lufisto in the arena 10 years ago, dropping each other on their heads, I'd do it in a heartbeat. That was a fun match and was a fun time. And I'm getting to watch another old generation. It'll be exciting to see which of these kids finally breaks out. Be great to see Lufisto get that payday. Be great to see Aaron Williams or Gary J. Some of these other guys have been following forever. I'm excited again for Shane Mercer at OVW and all these young kids. I just, like I said, I take inspiration from them. I've enjoyed getting to know them, not one of them I can say a negative word about. If I could, I would, but I'll put him over. I think Luke Curtis, you'd be crazy not to have Luke Curtis in your locker. You'd be crazy not to have a talent like Sean C. Royale or a Cash Flow or a Haley J or any of those folks over at OVW.
That's great. That's great. So
it's too bad you don't enjoy indie wrestling more.
It's just you like what you like, right?
Well, it's good. It's good to have a passion in it. So why don't you plug your website and how people can get a hold of your books if they're interested?
Absolutely. Yeah. My website is eatsleepwrestle.com. I've got a number of books.
Sleep Wrestle, all one word.
Eatsleepwrestle, all one word.com. All my historical biographies, the Louisville wrestling histories are up there. Latest thing I released, I had one on my desk and it's over there now, or otherwise I grab one. I've got these little booklets that are like 3.5 by 5.5. They're called match books. They've got kind of a collage of Louisville wrestling ads on the front. They've got a collage of some wrestlers that I've written about on the back. The inside of it, basically, it's just it fits in your pocket. It's a little journal. If you're a wrestler or if you're a ref or a manager, it's something you can record all your matches in. You can record up to 250 matches in one of these things. I took some to the show yesterday. A lot of kids are really, really, really loving them so far. But just a fun little thing. So that's out there. Chris Candido, Wahoo McDaniel, Madman Pondo, Mars Bennett, Elvira Snodgrass, Jude Byers, again, my latest release, are all up there. And don't overlook the other. I go for the story. Like I said, I'm a storyteller, and if you've got a great story, then I want to work with you. That's why I did. I went after Madman Pondo and said, you have to write a book. You have too many good stories. That's why I worked with Hurricane JJ McGuire.
Oh yes, we miss him.
And Dean Hill, the longtime announcer at OVW, it was a ton of fun writing his book and getting his stories down as well. So,
well, that's great. So thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully we won't be, absent for a couple of years. I don't think you've been on the show for almost 2 years. We had you on.
Hey, the Farmers had a great comeback last night too, Russell. That was exciting.
I'm still celebrating, still recovering from the celebration. But
I'll bet. So
I got one more game to win.
It just doesn't break my heart you sent the Lions home.
Well, there's always next season. There's always next season.
No. The North belongs to the Bears starting next year. We're not giving it back, so we'll see.
Well, it's again always a new season next year, but this season I'm pretty sure it belongs to these guys. Anyway, we'll catch you. See you next week, or we'll have you on again soon. And
can I do a quick plug?
Yes, please.
Go for it.
Evan Ginsberg's Old School Wrestling Memories on Facebook. 24/7, we're updating it, and we have tons of rare stuff on there and some interesting threads, and the historians will enjoy it.
It's fantastic too. So we'll have you on again soon, John, and we really appreciate you being our guest tonight, and best of the new year to you, and see you soon.
All right. It's a pleasure, guys.
All right. Good night.
Thanks, John. Thank you.